Hello and welcome to Tokenverse podcast series, where we interview the most inspiring and influential minds to discuss the future and potential of Web3 technologies. This production is brought to you by Doing Good, an NFT marketplace, empowering the creators and connecting people who want to do good across the world. My name is Ania Poullain-Majchrzak. I'm a journalist and film producer, and I'm very happy to be interviewing the founders of Aeternals project, Lucia Gallardo and Shaun. How are you, Lucia?
I'm feeling amazing. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. Shaun, are you okay?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think before we get into the Eternals project, great, thanks. I would like to talk a little bit about you, because you are very active. You've been very active in the Web3 scene. So would you be able to tell us a little bit about your background, what your journey has been, what other projects you have been involved in? Lucia, can you start?
Totally.
Yeah,
I'd love to. I mean, first of all, thanks for having us. It's been truly a pleasure, even in like the pre-interview and just like chatting, making time before we started the recording. It's just been great energy with you, and I'm really excited about this moment. But yeah, I've been involved in the blockchain space for a fair bit. I started learning about it in 2016, where I'd been working mostly in artificial intelligence and neurotechnology. And so I was completely in love and enthralled by the prospect of using technology for, sustainable development reasons, for humanitarian reasons, for social impact reasons. And that's kind of always been my passion. And so just learning about blockchain became particularly interesting to me, because it seemed like a very effective potential tool for democratizing access to technology and financial instruments that would really make a difference in the livelihoods of people around the world. So I was completely down a rabbit hole trying to understand it. And a few months later, even, I was already starting to work on a few solutions, and ended up starting my company Emerge, which focuses exclusively on the convergence of distributed technologies with let's say reimagined economic incentives, and then directing entirely to sustainable development and social impact initiatives. So I've worked on a lot of projects in those realms, in financial inclusion for farmers in Colombia, in Uganda, in Guatemala. I've worked with indigenous communities in Guatemala, Peru, Ecuador. I've done some work for the United Nations Development Program in the realm of digital identity, as well as digital identity projects for displaced populations like homeless or refugees, undocumented immigrants. And I've done a fair bit of work in supply chain for farmers across 157 villages in Africa. I've done work that relates a lot now to more creative elements and bringing in a fourth dimension, thanks to this partnership with Shaun around where creativity comes in and artistry comes in. So now we're doing some work, I'm doing some work for Hard Rock International, also for Run the Jewels, which is an incredible activist rap duo. And just finding ways and people that are just interested in bringing a perspective of well-being to this technology. And that's most of my career trajectory has been focused on enabling that. So a lot of different types of projects, which has been incredible to learn about and to just see the different facets and potential of this technology, and then connecting it back to the underlying foundations of it, which is how do we decentralize, how do we reimagine better economies, and how do we think about where people can be included either as recipients and beneficiaries of the technology, or as builders and collaborators on projects where traditionally they would have stayed away because it felt too technical or too hard to participate in innovation for the next generation. So it's kind of what I'm about, and I'm super excited that the Eternals is almost like the manifestation of all of those things together in one single project. So something it's a project I deeply love and I'm very connected to, and I'm super excited to talk about today.
Beautiful. Your work sounds extremely satisfying, and it must be a very significant moment right now.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier I looked in a dreamy state, like my background, but it's really I think permanently, right? Because it is fulfilling work. You're right.
Great. So it's very appropriate to your state of mind.
Yes.
Excellent. How about you, Shaun? Do you feel in the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after hearing Lucia's bio, and as many times as I hear it, it creates the same impact with me. I mean, who wouldn't want to work with Lucia? Like, I listen to all the awesome stuff that she's been doing. Who doesn't want to jump on that mission as well? I'll give a short background on myself. I mean, obviously, I'm extremely excited, but I kind of tell you why in a short history of myself. I started my career in a very traditional finance way in private equity. And I loved finance. I loved the engineering. I loved the intuition. I loved the learning. Back in those days, we had to learn about an industry. Like, they dropped something on my desk and I had to become a master of that industry in a week. So the challenge of learning something new very quickly was always something that excited me. But the work without impact or without some sort of meaning bothered me. And so, pretty quickly, I was about a year and a half in, I left and I pursued something called microfinance. And that ultimately culminated in me launching the first microfinance platform and the first micro franchising platform in the Caribbean. And for those of your viewers who might not be familiar, microfinance is basically finance to help address poverty. So very small loans to help people start as entrepreneurs. And this work gave me a lot of meaning, but the scale of the impact and the model of microfinance wasn't, to be very honest, applicable in all different areas. And I found in the Caribbean, as much as it was useful to some parts of the population, the old business phrase comes in, 99% of people are not entrepreneurs. So if you're looking at it as a solution to poverty, you're only going to be able to positively impact really sustainably 1%. So while it's a great tool, it has to be in the mix of things. So I went out to business school and I learned about a whole bunch of interesting ideas, management theory, lots of cool technologies. And then ultimately, I kind of stumbled into to Bitcoin and blockchain because a friend asked and called about it. And once I understood the potential, I mean, I was always a huge geek. So like, technology meets finance meets impact. I felt like this was an industry designed for me. I was like, okay, so I've just been waiting for like this industry to come along so that I could dedicate myself to it. And then literally a week after hearing about it, I was full-time in it. And well, it's the beginning, I think it's the end of 2016 or beginning of 2017 now. Sometimes these dates don't matter so much, but like it's around that time. And I've been full-time in it. And the way I approached learning, which is kind of the way I guess from my previous training, is invest first. And my orientation with investing was, if I'm basically investing, then the smartest people in the ecosystem explaining to me what they do. And through that, I built an understanding of the landscape of what is possible, but what are we doing? And I hoped I could build a vision of what's coming next. And that really culminated for me in a few different ideas. And just before this call, I was mentioning, Lucia and I have been in similar groups for quite a while. We've certainly chatted and talked, but it was only last year where we met in person. And when we met in person, it was hilarious. Like I said an idea that I had been formulating in my mind. And she said the same, well, she started laughing for a very long, uncontrollable time first to make me feel terrible. And I wasn't sure whether she was getting it or making fun of me. But then she said, "You don't know what I do you?" Like, no. And she was like, pretty much exactly the same thing. And I was like, what? And then since then, we were just inseparable. We were like, we will do this together because we had the same common vision of the world, which is this technology can be used to impact a greater number of people in the world in a more positive way, and not just people. Obviously, as you know from our project, and we'll get into the planet itself in so many incredible positive ways. And there's so many people who feel this way, but they just don't know how to get involved. And very quickly after that, we started just talking to a couple of friends, and I think it was less than a month and a half that we went from 0 people to 28 people that are all basically working on this simultaneously because they believe in the vision. And that was just incredible. And they're from so many different corners. And most of them, this is their first time working with blockchain technology, with NFT technology. They had no understanding of that. They just came from, I'm a creative and I care about impact. I'm a coder, I care about impact. I'm a game person, I care about impact. And I'm an impact and I care about new technology and all kinds of combinations in between. And this was their vehicle to be able to do that. I thought it was amazing. And I'm still thinking it's amazing.
Yeah. You're never going to let me live down the laughing. I honestly, it was like 2 minutes, okay, 3 minutes of like laughing in your face, but it was very sincerely funny to me because
it was terrifying for me.
I know. That's what makes it extra funny. Like, I feel like I continued to laugh after seeing your face. I couldn't stop laughing. But I think that really it's like we've been in the same circles for so long, and we just like you described it actually, Ania, so well. It was like a meeting of the minds. Like we were on the same page. We were asking the same questions about what the future of the NFT space would look like. And I think, you know, Shaun, you're like so thoughtful about the way that you look at the space and analyze it. And I just thought like this was a perfect combination of like we can think about NFTs in a way that is like viable over the long run, and that isn't just about like factoring in what NFTs can do for good, but really actually how we can like reimagine the tool of the NFT itself and what the object was in a way that was conducive to making impact something that was investable, not just like a desired outcome of the project, but that it became like a reason why you would want to invest in a project. And that to me is a very powerful precedent that can have a really great impact in the future in how we think about funding impact ventures, how we think about, you know, nonprofit organizations, and how we think about projects that can add impact as a utility, as opposed to just as a, you know, side thing that they donate some money to, which is great. Like it's still amazing, and we still do that. So it's really funny that I say that, but really like thinking more thoughtfully about how impact can be a more meaningful component of the utility of a financial instrument, to me was like incredibly exciting, and a moment in time that is possible thanks to where we're at with the technology today.
Absolutely. I mean, I could add, but I know Ania probably has some specific questions first. So please
No,
go ahead,
you're
Ania.
doing my job. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, well, you know, the way I think about technology in general, regardless of the technology, it's kind of from first principles. All technology is really a tool to humanity. You know, the same technology that gave us the atomic bomb in some people's hands gave us nuclear power in other people's hands. So, you know, like when you inject your version of humanity into cutting edge technology, that's when you get to shape the world. And so from our point of view, this is, I think, what is attractive to both of us about blockchain at this current point in time. It is the cutting edge of technology, no matter how you think about it, no matter which angle you come from it. And really, you breathe yourself into your applications. You breathe your own beliefs and your possibilities, because this technology can be used in a multitude of ways. It's kind of funny, you know, like a lot of people say that this industry is highly collaborative. And I agree. And it's the most collaborative industry I've ever worked in. And I love that. But there's a good reason for it. It's because there's far more possibilities than there are needs to compete. Whereas with investment banking, you know, you know, let's say traditional commerce or something like that, there's a small subset. There's like, you know, limitations. There's a scarcity theory. That's what economics is built on. Like not enough supply, not enough demand. When it comes to the opportunities, with a cutting edge technology, it's expansive. So there's no need to compete with everybody, because there's so much to do that you might as well collaborate and support each other. And when you meet people that have the same kind of orientation of what they would like to see the vision of the world be, and I think that this is most blockchainers and Bitcoiners and NFT people. So for those of your audience out there, I can guarantee you you're not alone, and I can guarantee you you're just like us. If you're in blockchain, you have something in common with almost everybody else in blockchain, which is this: you think the world can be better, and you think this is the vehicle to do it. Everybody we know that works in blockchain thinks this way. And this is fantastic, because the more and more people we meet, the more and more people that are interested in what we're doing. And also, they support us the same way we support them, because we see the collaborative nature. And yeah, there's something incredible about that, because then we start to bake in all kinds of extra features. I mean, our NFTs are, of course, impact, but also we've done incredibly beautiful artwork. And I can say this because I'm not the one to do it, because I'm usually quite you know, like a humble person. But I can actually, let's say, boast about this, because I didn't have anything to do with the creativity. The artwork, our artists are insanely talented. We are going to be the first ever 10K 3D generative, you know, like the graphics. Like there's no other 10K project that is a 3D generated asset. That's a scale by itself that's incredible. Each one of them unique. And then on top of that, we're a full game that has blockchain connectivity. And because we have a gaming studio that basically said, we want to build this, and it's incredible, it's meditative, it's peaceful, but also the game environment and a couple other data sources, when you play it, change your NFT and change the graphic nature of your NFT. Like that in itself, again, is just another coolness factor. And also another huge leap forward in terms of what NFTs can be. And then, you know, a little bit more dreaming, we were like, can we can we connect the natural environment to our NFT so that it informs you in a way? You know, like on your, let's say your phone, there's that weather app, and it has this little iconography of like a sun out or some clouds instead of just numbers. So you know visually straight away whether it's going to be a sunny day or a cloudy day or a rainy day. This is exactly the same kind of thing we're doing with sensors that we're placing in the rainforest to change the visual of your NFT. So you can know basically when nature needs you or when nature's doing well.
It's a good time, I think, because the project sounds amazing and I know a little bit more about the project. But for people who don't know Eternals yet, maybe it's a good time to explain them what actually the project stands for.
Sure.
Please.
So Eternals is a 10,000 unique, NFT collection. There's a couple of things that make it special, as Shaun has alluded to. One is that they're multidimensional. We've sort of seen a bunch of bull rides in the NFT space that demonstrate that NFTs can be literally anything. But this is actually trying to demonstrate that NFTs can be a little bit of everything. So as Shaun mentioned, the NFTs themselves are artful. They're very beautiful. Imagine like a floating island of rainforest beauty. But what's particularly special about the one that you buy is that inside it is 3 different states of lushness, 3 different states of growth for the plants and the wildlife that's in your NFT. So the more that you engage with the concept and the cause of rainforest protection, the more that you play our game, which is meditative and connects you to the actual wildlife that's in the rainforest, the more that you donate to Rainforest Partnership, the more that you participate in our community in relation to the events that we have around rainforest science and conservation, then the more that it feeds your NFT. And ultimately what ends up happening is your NFT changes state. So it grows more over time. And that change is reflected in your game asset. And it's also reflected directly on your wallet automatically. And so your wallet asset will change as well. The great thing about that, though, is that the work of rainforest protection is very difficult and it requires ongoing consistency. So in that same way, this NFT mirrors that commitment to the cause. And if you neglect your NFT for too long, it actually devolves backward into its original state. And so
when you say neglected, so is it a bit like were those little toys?
Digital Tamagotchi.
Yes, that's exactly what the point of inspiration was. I think it's fantastic that you picked it up. So you have to nurture it and care for it the way that our environment needs us to, in order to preserve the complexity of the NFT that you want. So depending on that state, right?
So how do you look after your NFT? That sounds mind-blowing.
You play the game, you participate in our community events, you donate to Rainforest Partnership. You just show us that you are actually committed to the cause of rainforest protection. And that is what leads it. And that's where I think the conversation we were having earlier comes in, which is like, historically speaking, like a lot of these things evolve by data streams of like in a certain time frame. Whereas here, what we're trying to do is say like your behavior matters in the grand conversation of climate action. Everybody's behavior matters. It's an issue that sometimes feels too big to solve, but actually it's just that it requires like coordinated collective action toward addressing some of these issues around climate change, like rainforest depletion. And so the idea that like your behavior in relation to rainforest protection, how much you participate in these events and how much you donate to an organization that's doing amazing work to protect some land in the deep Amazon and in the tropical Andes, I think that that's like really what we were trying to do. We were trying to say your actions in the grand conversation matter, but also now as an individual, you have direct influence over, let's say, the perceived value of your NFT, because the more that you evolve it, the more that like it changes the visual complexity of it and the more benefits you're able to get at different states. So if you were to sell your asset, let's say in a first state, it's the simplest state with the least amount of benefits. That has a price to it, right? If you sell it in its third state, it's the most complex version of your NFT and it comes with the most benefits. So you can sell that at a very different price point. And, today the market sets the price, but in this case, the market sets the price, sure, but you directly influence the price. And to me, that's like the most financially sovereign version of an NFT we've seen so far. And I'm really excited about that. and all great fun, but also 55% of the minting profits are going to support Rainforest Partnership, which is a nonprofit organization that's been doing the work of conservation for almost 20 years. They conserve over 1,400,000 acres of rainforest land. They're doing projects with 9 local and indigenous communities in South America. And so all in all, it's like a technically complex project. It's a financially interesting project, and it's a completely impactful project. And we're fiercely, fiercely proud of the team that came together to do this. And we're super excited to release it into the world.
It's like you're doing amazing new soup, but you're using all the organic and best organic ingredients. You've got everything there. It's a completely new dish.
Exactly right. I just wanted to add one quick thing to what Lucia was saying, just to, for simplicity. It's like we tried to think of making a very, let's say, complex set of interactions extremely simple. So we focused a lot on the user journey and the user experience in terms of thinking about our sale partner, thinking about the interactions in the environment. So as much as all of the things going on are complex in the ideology, the actual nurturing of your asset, the playing of the game, the donation, all of those things are very simple and peaceful and also contributing. And so you asked, how do you take care of your Eternal? Well, of course, apart from the other ways that Lucia mentioned, in the game itself, it is a very nurturing environment in the game with rainforest sounds, with like a very meditative idea. And what you're doing is clicking on things and watering the plants. You're adding sunshine, you're planting seeds, those kind of things. So it creates this feeling within you, like as if you're almost interacting with nature through a digital lens. And that was for us very important.
Already only beautiful images come to mind, but for people who are tuning in, like where can we see some of the imaginary? I mean, I suppose probably it would be too complicated to show anything now, but can we, and we're going to put the link in the description, but would you like to say the link to your project right now here?
Oh, absolutely. So the primary one where you will get linked to everything else is Aeternals.io, AETERNALS.io. We have our Twitter account, we have our Discord account, and actually throughout all of those, we've been showing previews of all of the different areas. So a lot of like the visuals are already available out there so people can see what interactions will be like.
Is the Discord account open? Can anybody join?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Lucia.
Please
no,
go
I was
ahead,
gonna say, like, we've got some surprises coming as well with like new showcasing of new art, and also some more teasers around what that game environment will be like and what the metamorphosis will be like. So we've got lots of content still to come, and it's definitely open to the public. But just like a very good second to thank our gaming team, because honestly, like, they're one of my favorite origin stories, because when they first came into this project, they were so excited by the mission, but they think, you know, they were like one of those groups that they're like, we're great gamers. We have a huge interest in blockchain. We want to, you know, build, blockchain based games. And it was awesome to sort of see, you know, and, you know, I'm not a gamer myself. Like I know Shaun was for a bit. So I think like he had more context in terms of like where they were coming from. But to me, our first meeting with them was hilarious, because they came in and they were like, so excited, and they had an adventure game plan, and it was like you accumulate, you know, you protect the rainforest and you accumulate like points or resources or whatever, and like 2 minutes in, we're listening to this pitch and we're like, veto, because we had had these conversations, these very deep conversations with Rainforest Partnership, who works through local and indigenous communities. And what they had mentioned to us that was really important in our early research for the project was that there was really no respect for projects that came into the rainforest and were consumptive or extractive of their resources. They don't own the land. Like, they care for it, most certainly. They steward it, most certainly, but they do not own the land. And they firmly believed that rainforests were to be public goods. And so when we were designing the mechanisms by which this project was going to exist economically, we had been very strict about saying your purchase of an eternal plot does not represent rainforest plots. It doesn't, because we don't want to make any connection between you thinking that owning this plot gives you the right to own, rent, sponsor, whatever, a real rainforest plot, because real rainforest is a public good. And this is your means of conserving and contributing to the maintenance of that and the protection of that public good. So it was very important for us to preserve the spirit of like, our project does not consume or extract from the rainforest. So the game can't do that either, right? And we're like, so nope, we cannot go there philosophically, because there's nothing about our project that needs to feed narratives of consumption or extraction. And they were fascinated by that. And I've had conversations with the gaming team since then about this moment, because to me, it was such a powerful moment of like, they just like sat together and said, okay, back to the drawing board. What do we like? How do we do this without like the traditional gaming narratives of adventure and accumulation and things like that? And it really challenged them to think creatively about how they come into this project. And what they came back with blew my mind, because it's relaxing, meditative, it's super peaceful, and like genuinely it makes you feel like you're in the rainforest, but in a way that just like it like I don't know how it does it, but it like makes you want to take care of it. Like it just inspires you to want to take care of it.
It's addictive. That's exactly what I wanted to say.
Yeah, so they did such an amazing job, but it really like shows the quality of commitment to the underlying philosophies of the project and to the values that we as a 28-person team share, to like doing this in a way that really speaks truly to the type of impact that we're trying to have. So I like mad props to the gaming team, because they just really knocked it out of the park second time around. And then it's just a game that I can't wait to play.
Fantastic. And you know, it's such an important cause, and it's mixing everything together, as you were saying, Shaun. Technology, it's art, you know, gaming. How about what's the target audience for the actual NFTs firstly, but then also let's talk about like what kind of, who would you like to learn about this project?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, with all of these different aspects, we really do go very broad with our audience. There are people who are going to care about this because they like the game and they're gamers. There are people who are going to care about this because they're into impact, and this is what the mission speaks to. And I think that if we look at the cross of all of those people, you know, like there's some people who are going to care about all aspects, and those are the obsessive ones like us, right? They're just like all kinds of cool things, and hopefully for the world, there's not too many of us out there like across everything. But no, seriously speaking, there's like a little bit of everything. There's a little bit of something that'll appeal to everybody. It was amazing watching Lucia on stage at North American Bitcoin Conference, because I got to see the reactions of the audience and hear a little bit the chatter at the side. So when when Lucia presented the project on the stage of the American Bitcoin Conference, we had like this amazing moment where the MC left the stage area, ran down to our booth sometime after, like a couple talks after, spent the entire time down there saying, "My wife is obsessed with this. How do I get it?" So his wife comes to the conference, has never seen an NFT that she got, understood, or wanted to buy before, and she wants these. And he came downstairs just to make sure that she could reserve one. So this appeals broader. With the microphone in hand while the stage is still running.
Yeah, like it wasn't after it. The event was going. There was a speaker on stage, and he came down with a microphone. Yeah. That was hilarious.
So for everyone who is like the wife, like if they go to the website Aeternals.io, like you can still get one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So our sale isn't going to come on for a few weeks still, and we'll make announcements in Discord a couple of weeks before so people know. But the reason I brought that up is there's so many people who it's their first time ever considering an NFT, and they get it because we've made something that makes sense to people for the first time. Like I personally think that every NFT project, every blockchain project still is an experiment. And the varying degrees of success of those experiments. But when it comes to some NFT projects, people just don't get it because they're not on the cutting edge of wanting to be experimental. With this, because there's impact, or because there's a game, because there's tangible things in different directions, it appeals to both people who are ready in our world, but also to people who are brand new, who'd never considered this before, because they get what we're trying to do, or they get, they're aligned to a particular mission point, which I think is great.
And it's so true. Instead of explaining to someone what NFT is, to tell them the details of technology. It's so much better to tell them about a project like yours, right? Because you've got so much emotion about it.
It's like, instead of telling them, let's just show them. Like, here's one. Like, have a play. And this is what you're doing by playing. And this is what you did by buying it. Like, I don't know how else to express it, but where's the risk if you've decided, like, I'm going to buy an NFT, but 55% of it is impact. It's basically like, in your mind, at least from my mind, it's charitable contribution. Then on top of that, I get this other benefit of having a game as well. And I can play that, and it's kind of meditative. Plus, I can see it change over time. Plus, it works. Yeah, exactly. Plus, it works to tell me what's going on in the rainforest environment. I'm cool, you know, like, and that's what I wanted. My mom understands it. That was important for me.
Something that I think I really am super proud of is that it's like, it is an impact measurement tool as well. Like, I don't think like we've tapped into that all that much, but I think like one of those things is it's measuring impact in two ways. One, it's saying like, where are you at in state of metamorphosis is telling you how you're contributing to the cause of rainforest protection. And that's, I think, something really important, because I think people want to help. They care, like people in our industry care about the environment. Like if you think about, you know, the sources of energy that blockchain is built on, it's renewables, right? Like we use, for the most part, especially when it comes to like Bitcoin or when it comes to Ethereum, like the sources of energy are largely stranded, solar, aeolic. Like our industry cares about the environment. And I know like that gets drowned out in this conversation about consumption of energy, but like source wise, like we're more clean than other industries are. And I think that like that desire translates into like, I want to help support it. How can I do that? And here's a tool with which you can do that, but also to see how much you've contributed into this issue and demonstrate that through the state of your metamorphosis. And the second thing that it measures is the effectiveness of RP as an organization. And so, you know, RP sets goals every 6 months that they want to achieve. And then, you know, we're helping achieve that. And then the more that they achieve, like the more that that their achievements like contribute to the collective state of metamorphosis for everyone. So this is a tool that says, hey, we have collective incentive to support this Rainforest Partnership Organization's work. On top of that, when they succeed, we succeed a little more. And then it's also measuring you as an individual and your impact in this cause. So I think that's also a really interesting dimension of it. And then not to mention, it's just like aesthetically, it's like, it's a mind-blowing, beautiful asset. Like it's just so, like every person that I've shown it, like I have it on my phone as like a favorite. So I just like pull it up all the time. And every single person I show it to, they're just like a little bit mind blown. And it's a very beautiful asset. Like our creative team just went into such a healthy place with it because it's truly a reflection of the rainforest. And you know, it lets you explore the rainforest in ways that people that have never been to one just wouldn't be able to know, right? And especially with that connection in real time to the weather. And so you're really getting the experience of going to a rainforest, which if you've never been to, like, I think everyone should. And not even, you know, not to mention features that we haven't even talked about, like, you know, giveaways for ultra rares and things like that, which we can get into later. But it's just such a well-rounded experience of the NFT space, like technically, but also just like a real tribute to nature and a real tribute to like the ways that your actions and your decisions can influence nature. And I think that's really cool.
And what naturally comes to mind, and you probably get it a lot, is this whole climate controversy around NFTs. So would you usually respond to that question?
Yeah, I'm happy to go ahead. You want to start it off, Lucia? I'm happy to start if you'd like.
I mean, honestly, for us, it's really like we get asked this question a fair bit, especially in relation to our choice for minting on the Ethereum blockchain. I think that's sort of been something that we've been very thoughtful about. My answer usually boils down to two different things. The first is that blockchain is a technology that concerns itself with sustainable development. It is not oftentimes this conversation is very reductive and is talked about in the context of environmentalism, but environmentalism isn't the only way that things can be sustainable. We need to concern ourselves with economic well-being. We need to concern ourselves with social inclusion and with environmental components. There's many dimensions to this, right? So to me, Ethereum is a tribute to something that is, you know, highly decentralized. It's a highly inclusive protocol. It's a beginner-friendly protocol, and that to us was very important. That, as Shaun mentioned, if people were going to be buying their first NFT ever, we needed to make it a protocol that they had heard of, a protocol that they could more or less kind of like be less weary of or trust even. and then one that had enough user experience that it could be easier to onboard people when the time came. And so for us, that social element, social inclusion and financial inclusion element were very important. The second thing about this is that the conversation around the environmental and energetic consumption of blockchain is often also very reductive and focuses too much on consumption of energy. Of course, we consume a lot of energy, too much energy, and we're all very conscious of it and actively working to diminish the amount that is consumed, and also to change the ways that we power our blockchain. But if we look at the overall ecosystem in financial sectors, then traditional finance consumes infinitely more energy. It does. But also what it does is that the sources of energy are very different. The banking sector traditionally runs on oil and gas. The blockchain industry largely runs on renewables. In fact, some studies that, like, for example, CoinShares has put out, estimate that about 70% of blockchain mining, like protocol mining, is done via renewable sources, namely stranded solar and aeolic. So we are an industry that, without having received any subsidies, any incentives or relief from government, has self-motivated into being a renewable first technology. And I think that that is a really powerful statement, and one that often gets swept under the rug in these conversations. And that, to me, is something that we can continue to encourage as an industry, and that we're actively self-motivatedly working on in order to continue to grow that number, and also in order to continue to push for ways to make the technology itself a lot more energy effective. So to me, we're a work in progress. And obviously there's like things that we can improve on, but I think that as an industry, we should be very proud that we have demonstrated very clearly that we are self-motivated toward energy, environmentalism, toward social inclusion, and toward financial inclusion, the different components of sustainable development, in a way that no other industry can claim at all. And so I'm fiercely proud to be part of this industry, and I think that we have a response as a collective industry, not just as the Eternals project, but as an industry, we have a response to criticism about our energy consumption, and we have a response about any claim that says that it's somehow not sustainable in any way, shape, or form.
Can I add on top of that?
Sure.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Lucia said. I couldn't have said it better myself. But then with the Eternals, we decided on top of that, let us see how much further we can go. So we did two things without trying to get too technical. When we're creating the assets, the NFTs themselves, the visual assets, we have to render them. And that's basically a consumptive process of computer processing in order to create that. And we partnered with a company that is 100% responsible with their energy sources and with the use of their heat. So in fact, they're based out of Paris. They're called Tresorio. And the gaming team that Lucia referred to earlier was Mavericks. And basically, they're using all of their power to heat different parts of Paris, the runoff energy. So they're basically exactly, thank you. So they're incredible and fantastic. So we chose a responsible partner for that aspect of it. On top of that, we're contributing 1% of all secondary sales to the purchase of carbon credits. Now, a lot of projects have done a static amount, which is in the primary sale. Like we said, we're giving 55% to the RP. We could have given 5% to the purchase of carbon credits. But instead of that, we did it as an ongoing mechanism, which is every time an Eternals is sold between two people, 1% of that goes to carbon credits, because that means that there's no limit as to how many carbon credits that we could potentially buy, which means that we can not just get to the point of carbon neutrality, which is what a lot of projects aim to do. There's the possibility we can actually go carbon negative, which means that we could actually sequester more carbon than the project ever created, and potentially infinite amounts. There's no cap on how much could happen. So we've thought about the design of the economics to include this, as well as chose our choice of technologies to, as Lucia said, to broaden access and to make sure that people understand that blockchains themselves are not as, let's say, damaging as people think, while providing tremendous amounts of value to the world.
Yeah, I think that Tresorio example is great. They power it, so they turn it into like heat, and then they heat social housing buildings across France. So yeah, I think it's a great initiative, and as Shaun mentioned, like the carbon credit situation is really important to us as well. So really, there's and I think the last thing that we've done, which I think is super cool, is we've created our own impact measurement framework. So we actually have, maybe like the document that we've been working on that tracks all of the indicators that we're using to measure our impact, everything from the composition of our team and like what we represent regionally, what we represent across gender and identity. And then we also have metrics around the actual impact of the project as the Eternals. So what, are we operating digitally? Are we, through the measurements of the computer processing power, through our relationship with Tresorio, to like anything that relates to the impact that the Eternals is having, the way that we print swag, for example, we only use sustainably made swag when we go to conferences and things like that. So all of that is being tracked. And then the last component is the indirect impact that we're having by financing Rainforest Partnership projects. So there's metrics around what impact they're achieving as well. So we've designed our own measurement framework to make sure that we're being open and transparent about what that impact footprint is. And the other thing that we've done with that is that we've opened that up to the community. So actually a lot of our Twitter spaces and questions on our Discord and collaborating communities that come into our Discord wanting to do stuff together, a lot of it relates to like people asking us for help and how they can better measure or think about impact more holistically. And so we've been like very open about that as well. And we've taken on almost like a very excited moment in time to say like any project in this space that's looking to understand impact more comprehensively, or that's looking for metrics so that they can measure their own project, like join our Discord and ask and like look through the material. We're very happy to put that out there, and we're very happy to support projects that are in vision and in philosophy like very aligned with ours and in values, right? So that's another thing that we've done quite openly in relation to sustainable development. It's been like being open and transparent about how we measure, about how we can contribute to other projects that have similar values, and that has actually been one of the most received questions that we've had so far across Twitter Spaces and across our Discord.
It's definitely a very inspiring project, and also I think probably you are the pioneers when it comes to the use of NFTs in the impact sector. I was wondering if you could tell me what you think the situation is going to be, let's say, in 5 years' time.
Yeah, if I may, I'll take a first shot, and then Lucia, you jump in. So I'm going to make a really bold statement here, but this is the way I like to think about NFTs. I think what crypto did for money, NFTs are going to do for assets, all types of assets, both physical and digital. I think right now the world has seen and started to accept NFTs as a visual form and a visual media, and the visual asset side will grow. What I say by that is there's artistic ones, there's and people can see and tangibly feel things like art on the blockchain, and that's a specific type of an asset because they're unique. And that's what differentiates an asset from like something like money. Money is all the same, it's homogenous, and that's why a normal token works for that. When things are different, they need a non-fungible token. That's the entire nature of fungibility. So what we're going to see is more and more types of assets being represented on the blockchain as NFTs. And this becomes very, very exciting for the possibilities of interactions between assets and between assets and money in a blockchain trust-enabled environment or trust-enabled tech layer. So what I think you're going to see first is you're going to start to see a variety of different types of assets come on as NFTs. We're talking art, we're talking real estate, we're talking obviously things like, people are seeing things like sports memorabilia and gaming and stuff like that, but it's going to start to go beyond that to traditional assets as well. Company shares, stocks, all of those kind of things can be represented as NFTs as well. And then after that point, we're also going to see that, let's say that's the iceberg. The base of the iceberg is all kinds of data stuff, healthcare data, transaction data, that's all unique to the individual. And we're going to see sovereign IDs or IDs of people being built on a combination of NFTs and traditional tokens. And every brand in the world that has recognizable IP at the top of the iceberg level, so what people see, they're going to put that as an asset on the blockchain. An example I usually use is like Disney. Like Disney is one of the great like companies of all time in terms of IP. And they're an IP machine, right? When Disney bought Lucasfilms and they bought Marvel, they did so because they recognized they could take that IP and churn it out into 4 different types of products and create like business out of that, revenue for them. It's like the game park, the merchandise, the TV videos, and like online games, really. Those are their 4 sources of income, nothing else. NFTs for them are an entirely new source of revenue and an entirely new stream, and they can use that same IP there. But then underneath that, there's going to be companies like, excuse me, like Shopify or like Salesforce, or even like the large healthcare players like AstraZeneca that are going to use NFT data on patient records to basically gather all kinds of crowdsourced intelligence, see big data players, use an analysis, but also push like services to different people around personalized medicine, so to speak, utilizing the blockchain. So I think I've hodgepodged 2 years and 10 years from now into an average of 5 years for your question, but basically that's the wave of what I think is going to come, and there's the invisible part and the visible parts simultaneously. Lucia, feel free to jump in and add to what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've expressed it very well, and I'm like in complete agreement with what you're saying. And I also think the interesting bit about this like underlying data thing that you've described is like our understanding of human behavior and engagement. And I think that's going to be something that a lot of brands and people are going to seize on, either from the digital identity space, which I'm seeing in real time through my work, but then also through the brand loyalty space as well. So we're seeing a lot of interest in people using NFTs to understand how individuals engage with particular types of content and the ways that they engage with a brand that might have multiple divisions in it. So, you know, if you're thinking of, let's say, to continue with your metaphor on Disney, you know, it's a brand that has not just like content online, but it also has like swag and like merchandise that they're wanting to sell. It's got amusement parks. It's got, you know, all of these different layers of business. And if you treat traceability of, you know, how a person goes through the brand and whether they're interested in merchandise or whether they're not, whether they've ever visited an amusement park or not, then like Disney as a company now has this like new level of understanding of their consumers that allows them to create very curated experiences, offers, rewards, further token incentives, et cetera, to really commercialize you in a way that actually hasn't been seen yet. And that's like a very powerful statement, because we feel that we've reached this point where we're so targeted by brands already through, you know, tools like Instagram. But actually this is nothing yet, because we're gaining an understanding, a traceable understanding of the ways that you can build loyalty between a customer and a brand in newer ways through a tool like NFT. So I think like the flip side of just like the asset side of this, and I think you've alluded to it in the data, is that the traceability potential and the opportunity to understand human behavior and engagement and incentives is actually going to be much higher in the next few years as people understand the nuanced opportunity within the NFT sector. And so I think it is a very exciting space. I think there needs to be, you know, a very big push for the, you know, continued importance of principles like sovereignty within our digital identity, within our loyalty programs, within our whatever it is that we end up building and using NFTs and leveraging NFTs. And I think that a lot of this will have to come from us, because brands that are coming into it see this opportunity. And it's like on us to build technology stacks that are protective of the underlying values of this industry and that of this technology. And I think that it's going to be like increasingly more important for us to like advocate for responsibility, privacy, sovereignty, ethics more than ever, because NFTs present a turning point in the way that we understand behavior and engagement as well.
So do you see NFT technology as a potential solution to data abuse problem as well?
Solution or bigger problem, like it could be a bigger problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's exactly, you know, when I started off with that principle about technology in the right hands or the wrong hands, but you don't have to color it in black and white, so to speak, but it is now at this point in both blockchains, not just blockchain, you know, blockchain is the underlying. So, but what was once one industry in blockchain has now become known as like 5 different industries. People think NFT, crypto, etc. But at the end of the day, when you get to blockchain related businesses, a principle first approach is absolutely necessary at this point because of the sustainability of the direction in which we're going to go if we don't build with those principles. And for somebody like Lucia and myself, and once again, this is where we say the meeting of the minds, that's why we had to work together. Because like from our point of view, that's why we had to build. And I said, I made the transition from an investor to a builder. And it wasn't a light decision. It's because I knew that it's important at this point in time. And I felt it justified and necessary to build things the right way, because they're going to impact generations beyond this point. And they can either solve our problems, let's just say, or like create new ones, or continue the machine on the same path or shift the path. It's always when the big new tool comes out that you have this opportunity. And if you think of it like a lever on the world, you get to shift the direction. And that's basically what I kind of constantly think of. And that's why we talk about values first, right? Really, Web3 values to us and lots of people in this industry are around basic protections, as well as, like possibilities. So freedom, while at the same time privacy. Sometimes they may seem contradictory, but that's only the current narrative. It is possible to have influential power while having protected privacy. And we can do that and build that well in our world. So the common narrative doesn't exist when you're inventing. You can invent whichever way you want.
Yeah. So you see the biggest threat to this ecosystem when it comes to values, right? You're not worried about technical aspects of it. Then how can we protect this community from abuse? What would you like to see done?
That's an interesting question that I've actually been thinking about a lot. I'm in the midst of almost publishing a paper through the United Nations Development Program that covers a bit of like maluse and misintention of system. And I think that like one of the key elements that I think is, what are our industry best practices and standards, right? Like, how do we hold projects accountable when they are not representative of what the types of values are that we want to protect within Web3? And I think that like, this is something that is quite fascinating, because we should have known this already, because we went through ICO era and we didn't have these like mechanisms by which we were, comparing projects to like, what are the best practices in this space? Like, is there a best practice in this space? And then also by the same token, it was a question of like, great, well, like this project may not fly in like the US, but it will fly in like another country that doesn't even have regulation, or that has like flexible regulation depending on like how much capital you're going to inject into it or whatever. And so I think that like it becomes a question of like, can a project act in a way that is, abusive or malintentioned or whatever, and then direct that at other types of audiences, because it might not fly by the SEC in the US, right? So there's like questions around what are the best practices of our industry, regardless of jurisdiction? What are the values that Web3 stands for? And because we are constantly advocating about how Web3 is, an empowering technology, and it's an inclusive technology, and it's a decentralized technology, like we need to show up for that in ways that set these like best practices, but in the form of pressure toward projects. We should be expecting projects to be very transparent about their metrics. We should be, expecting projects to be very transparent about the way that they handle finances, the way that they're going to handle capital raise, the way that they're going to handle product lifespans and roadmaps. And, that doesn't mean, again, as Shaun mentioned, like you can have expectations, standards, freedom, and still have privacy. Like, and we know that because we have a whole ecosystem of wallet addresses. And so this idea that like we can apply pressure and just like set behaviors and standards and best practices internally as an industry, and use and leverage our voices and power, which we constantly tell other people blockchain offers. Like we're very great at that. We tell everyone, and everyone that's not a blockchain believer, we're like, yeah, like this is the era of like decentralized governance. Your voice matters in blockchain. Okay, like let's show that by saying, hey, we're going to apply pressure to make sure projects are living up to these values, and we're going to call out projects that aren't. And we're going to try to turn, and leverage the very strength of our technology, which is this notion of decentralization, and that technology can be a force for good and for evil, and everything in between. But essentially use the very premise of the technology and decentralization to call it out and to be more proactive about the standards that we set as an industry. And we have historically relied on policymakers, regulators to come in and say, this is what is ethical, this is what is not ethical. But I think we've reached a point where we can also have an understanding, and we've learned enough from 2017 and then some, and we've learned a lot since then, right? So we should be really vocal about it. We should be working together to find ways in which we can push toward better behaviors. We're happy to share resources. We're happy to share measurement frameworks. We're happy to, collaborate with projects that we think have really great intentions. And I think that the nature of decentralization, the nature of community building that this industry offers, enables us to seize this moment and say, we're going to actually be proactive and action oriented about setting better standards that protect against wider misuse. And I think that might set a cultural change and behavior about what is acceptable in our industry or not, because regulators are having a tough time catching up, and they're doing it in ways that are actually trying to be punitive around some of the best value offerings that this technology has. So if we continue to wait for that, it's never going to be a great solution to the issue of potential abuse. The only way that we're going to solve it is if it comes from within, as a collective incentive to do so, and as a collective decision to say values come first. And this technology only thrives if we get this right in the underlying value system that we enable through this ecosystem. And I think that that's a very important thing that every protocol has to think about, every community has to think about, and every project builder has to think about as well.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Lucia, is that how you see your role going forward when it comes to this this ecosystem?
Yeah,
this
I'm pretty
community?
direct. I think Shaun's laughing because he knows I'm kind of I will spit it out. I definitely have talked about projects I'm not okay with, and I think that's what we all have to do. I don't think it's specific to me. I think I see my role, yes, absolutely, as someone that has a voice to be able to say I support this project. I think very highly of this component. I'm happy to share some of my experiences and some of the lessons that I've learned and the expertise that I've gained throughout my career. Absolutely, I'm happy to do all of that. But what I really want is for us all to do that, because it is an open ecosystem. It's intended to be decentralized, and we're so good at telling politicians, and we're so good at telling people that don't own a Bitcoin that we're this decentralized place where everything that you do as an individual matters. And yet we have an ecosystem that we really need to protect the values of, and our voices matter there too, and we need to apply that inward and just make sure that we're collectively setting a better standard every single day, because obviously as new technology evolves at the pace that it does, there's always the need to continuously self-assess. And so I think it's everybody's responsibility to self-assess and then assess outwardly as well.
What are the best platforms to voice these opinions?
Discord, Twitter. I don't know.
One of the issues that the ecosystem has is that the communication technology we've kind of adopted from other technologies. I wouldn't say that it's the worst thing ever, but Twitter wasn't necessarily designed for communities, and NFT projects are really communities. They're communities that are linked together by common ownership of a digital good, but really they're communities. And Discord, while it's a decent communication tool, was certainly not designed for the NFT community. It was adopted by the gaming community. They tried to specialize it for the gaming community, but it's still not quite right. We have different, Twitter's definitely the most far-reaching in terms of blasting, but it's not good for conversations. It's good for statements. And and Discord is also kind of cumbersome when it comes to conversations, because following the threads is difficult. And then WhatsApp is limited, and Telegram is also too just gets too big. And so there's no really one place that I would say is the ideal for that. But I will say that when you meet with like-minded people, especially around conferences and events in person, a lot of incredible conversations happen when the meeting of the minds happen. And it's sad that not everybody can be in those environments because it limits. But what comes out of those conferences is more than communication. It's projects, it's builds, it's experiments. So I think the right way to communicate with the world actually is not tell them what should be done. It's build it for them and make it easy for them to use. That's really
build it with them.
Build it with them as well.
Yeah.
But to me, what I mean is, I mean, just as a general idea, it's like, I guess people used to say, like, I grew up in a house where my mother said, never talk about what you're going to do, just do it. And then, you know, let the work do the talking, you know, like, and so I think about that, like in our approach to the space, instead of trying to educate people, which is good too, like, don't get me wrong, it has its place. Instead, give them easy tools that give them benefits and let them use it. They don't need to understand it. When, like, you know, both Lucia and I do a lot of public speaking, and usually what I do is I pull up one of these and I go, anybody know how to use this? And everybody goes, and then I say, who knows how to build it? Nobody puts up their hand, or like one or two people. You don't need to know how blockchain functions. You don't need to know how NFTs work. You don't need to know the code base. If we make the user experience easy enough that people can use it for actual good. So for me, and it's a bit of a roundabout answer to your question, but I think that that's the thing that has the most impact. Let's build powerful tools that are easy for people to use, and let's give them functionality in their hand.
Well, also, I think it's important to consider like who is doing the building. Like for me, what's been interesting is like, it's great. And I completely am on board with what you're saying about democratizing like access to the tools, democratizing the tools themselves, et cetera. Like, absolutely. But I think it's also very important to democratize access to who's building this. How are we making sure that our teams are inclusive? Like, I don't know if anybody saw, I'm going to just like flat out use this example, but like Bain Capital put out an announcement on Twitter of their new crypto team on the 8th of March, which happens to be International Women's Day, and there wasn't a single woman on the team. So, you know, like, of course they got slaughtered on Twitter for it, but that just goes to show like who are the decision makers in this space, who are building these projects, like that matters too. And I think there's like something to be said about the natural values orientation that more diverse teams have than teams that are not that diverse, because they're in some kind of echo chamber and lived experience where values are almost like neglected or assumed. And then the project is the outcome of that. Whereas when you have different types of teams, different perspectives, different people feeding into it, values conversations generally tend to come up more because people are trying to find their place within this team and whether this vision fits. And so I think that it's just like a natural segue into building better projects, not just by quality of perspective, but also by quality of like the underlying like need to almost like have values or stipulate values, because you're trying to build something that's inherently intended to appeal to more people, and it's a reflection of more people that are building it. So I think who builds this space and democratizing that is also just as important. I also find it funny that like we are in fact using Web 2 tools to communicate, which is hilarious. But the other thing that shows us is that actually, if you look at the state of blockchain today, a lot of what we are building is a little too close to Web 2. Like a lot of the financial products, the financial instruments, like the way that yielding works, the way that everything works in the blockchain space very often is a little too reminiscent of how it worked in Web 2.0. We've just like extra digitized it by distributing it or something, but it's still too close. And so I think this idea that like we have like we need a moment of saying like, how different is Web 3.0 than Web 2.0, like really, like, you know, and I think Jack Dorsey's gotten into a lot of trouble for alluding to this, but he's like, well, the finance mechanisms apparently are the same now. And like the financial instruments are often the same now. And the communications platforms are the same. And we're just doing it on all like a Web 2.0 stack minus the underlying technology, you know, the underlying technology infrastructure. So I think that it's a very interesting moment to sort of ask ourselves, like, are we literally just doing the same? And I think identity is also another space where this is happening, where like, if you're going through KYC AML for a blockchain, you know, related product, like if you're going through KYC AML for a wallet, it's still a photocopy of your passport. It's still like that's what you need in order to go through it. And like, that just tells you where we're at in terms of like our reliability on Web 2.0. And I think that for us to really understand how to carry this forward in a way that is a lot more true to the principles that we're trying to create for Web3, we need to take like inventory of all of the ways in which actually we're building almost a mirror image of the world that we live in today in Web 3.0, and that's not acceptable. And so for me, there's lots of opportunity for projects and people that are looking at all of these tools and saying, actually, we can reimagine those. We can inject a little bit more freedom and sovereignty into this financial instrument. We can inject a little bit more organization into DAOs. We can inject a little bit more distribution into how we communicate, et cetera, right? There's plenty of opportunity. And that opportunity is not just technical. So if you are listening to this podcast and you are not technical, but you are a good communicator, you are someone that has a creative vision, you are someone that knows someone that fits that criteria, like this space is in need of everything. It needs communicators, it needs developers, it needs graphic designers, it needs UX, UI, it needs people that understand finance, it needs people that understand social behavior, it needs everything. And so, you know, we need to bring more people in to become builders, more people in that reflect the true range and diversity of the world to become builders, so that ultimately the byproduct, like the end result of that and the outcome of that is better products that are more considerate of different lived experiences, and that by default have certain measures of inclusion that that are aligned with Web 3.0 values. So definitely taking inventory, because I definitely don't want to see Web 2.0 on a distributed network. That doesn't make any sense in my mind.
I wonder if someone had an idea to make this kind of, I don't know, like sky scanner, which would put all the, you know, projects together and would kind of show us like what's the team, what is financial structure, and so on, you know?
Yeah.
It would be great.
It would be
exactly. But on that note, Shaun, I'm not going to be like your mother, and I'm going to ask you, like, in 10 years' time, like your personal goals, where would you like to see yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my thoughts, they've evolved over time, right? So like, I'm not one of those people that's like tangible in terms of numbers and specifics. I like to think in terms of the impact that I would have. And there's certain like, well, personal ones around family, you know, like family kids are in my picture as well. But on top of that, from a career point of view, I'd like to know that through the work that we do in blockchain, that there was a significant impact into a number of different peoples in their lives. Like, and that's the way I think about whether I've had a great impact. Money isn't my greatest motivator. Of course, it's necessary and it's important, but impact for me is probably the most important thing. When I got into this industry in 2017, my ambition was to become one of the leaders in the industry. And I think that that's a tricky kind of word, because you start to think about what people perceive you as versus what you perceive yourself as. And my understanding of that has evolved over time. I care less about what people perceive me as, if I'm being very honest. That to me is a good evolution in my perspective. What I do care about, though, is that I've been able to influence the way that this technology is applied, and how it's you know, delivering value and protecting and also empowering people around the world. So for me, I'm going to be ambitious, and if I were to be super happy, and you know, let's say, and the no regrets test is if you die in 10 years, if I were to say that, tempting fate for a second. And I touched, I don't know, 1 billion people with the way that like technology did, then that would have been a life well lived.
Absolutely. You know, we've got we should be finishing soon, but I was wondering if we still have time for this cute little thing we do on this podcast, where we ask the guests to tell us a little story, which is a bit, you know, abstract, random, funny, something that online community doesn't know about. I was wondering if you're happy to share anything like this.
Yeah, go for it, Lucia. Like,
oh my God,
we had a little pre-conversation.
I'm sure you have a story. Probably already where you are.
I'll give you a hint, Lucia.
Okay. Oh. That's so funny. Yes, I knew you were going to ask this question and I didn't have an answer. So of course I went to Shaun to get an answer. And he thought of something that I don't think about often because I'm so used to it. But actually every single piece of jewelry that I own has a story. I only own jewelry that has a story attached to it. So whether it's specific to like who made it, sometimes it's made by indigenous communities from my home country, groups of women, female entrepreneurs. Sometimes it's because it was given to me by a person in a specific context. But I literally do not own a single piece of jewelry that I just bought off like whatever store or for no reason at all. Every single one of it has its own unique story attached to it. So I travel with it everywhere. It's what I would consider one of my most precious possessions is my set of jewelry, specifically because of every memory attached to every single piece. Yeah.
A very smart way to be having jewelry.
Yeah.
I think
yeah,
everybody should have this rule.
Yeah. Well, also I have specific attachments to certain ones, right? So during the North American Bitcoin conference, I was a little bit nervous before my talk. And so I very carefully selected the jewelry I was going to wear. And I wore this pair of earrings that my mother gave to me. They were actually made by an indigenous community called the Lenca community in Honduras. And it's essentially a pink stone and a floral design sculpture in gold. And the floral sculpture is actually a tribute to the natural wildlife in Honduras. And actually, Honduras has the largest rainforest environment in Central America. So the mini Amazon, let's call it, of Central America. And so it's a tribute to the rainforest of Central America. So I chose those earrings for the day I was going to talk about the Eternals on stage. The other bit of fun in that story is that the reason the stone is pink is because when I first started in technology, I was like a fish out of water. Like I was literally one of the only women on my team. It was like a very masculine space. And I had by default sort of like masculinized my presentation. Like I was wearing dark colors, I was wearing more pants and things like that. And it was kind of like not true to who I am at all. And so at one point, I had a conversation with my mom and I was like, I need to own the fact that I'm a woman in tech. I'm a woman in blockchain. I'm like very fiercely proud of that. And I need to come back into like my femininity or whatever. And so I used the first public talk I ever gave to wear the most girly dress on the planet just to make a statement. It was also out of character. It was like the other extreme, but still I felt like I needed to go there. And so when I told my mom what I'd done that Christmas, she gave me these earrings and she's like, first of all, it's made by an indigenous community. Second of all, it's a tribute to Honduras. And third of all, the stone is pink to remind you that you can be in touch with your inner self. You can be your most authentic self. And as you go through this journey of building and creating in male dominated spaces, you can feel the courage that you need and the reminder to feel the courage that you need to just be your most authentic self, regardless of what it is. So the earrings are really special to me. And I wore them when we launched the Eternals. I don't even think the team knows this about these earrings, but they mean a lot to me. And I also made Shaun put on all of these bracelets on my arm because it was like, well, you gave me this one, Shaun, and my mom gave me this one, and my dad gave me this one, and my friend gave me this one. So they each had a meaning. And I just felt very comforted knowing that I was wearing things that were meaningful to people, and that together that was I felt their support for this project. I felt their support for my career, and I continue to feel their support today. So that's my little fun fact, is that I travel with very special jewelry.
It's very inspiring. I think what I would like to do, I would like to go, I don't know where my jewelry, so maybe I would like to go through all my clothes, maybe throw away everything that doesn't have any meaning for me.
Donate it, recycle it, donate it, recycle it.
Exactly.
You see the impact that Lucia has on everybody in their life, right?
I know, obviously, yes. I get that. Shaun, how about you? Do we have what can we learn?
So I'm going to give you a little insight into Lucia and my work relationship. So she asked me this question, I gave her an answer. I asked her this question, she gave me no answer. So it was fantastic. It's very equal, what's going on. So I was lost trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to talk about. But yeah, I'll do the embarrassing reveal. So when I was about 17, I think, I started teaching myself to play the piano. I had one at home. I was lucky. So I grew up in the Caribbean in Trinidad. We had one at home, and nobody would play it. It was just kind of decorative. And I started doing that. And then especially in my 20s, I would find there were little times I was by myself, and I would use it as kind of a mechanism, an outlet. And I self-taught myself to play. And then I started composing, actually. So I've composed about 15 to somewhere between 15 and 18 pieces that no one has ever heard except my family and one or two people over the years. But it was always my outlet for creativity. And it was the first time that I ever really got into the appreciation and understanding of the creation of music. And a lot of it was based on mood and nature. So I would listen a lot because Honduras and Trinidad, our climates are very similar. We're actually, Trinidad as an island is the only island that came off of South America, whereas all of the other Caribbean islands are volcanic. So our nature is very much the same as the Amazonian rainforest, because technically we were an Amazonian rainforest that's just specialized. So hearing those sounds, I reflected that in my music, as well as what I felt like was my inner journey and going through those. And yeah, I made a lot of interesting music around that. That a lot of people, that I say my family, that listened to it found it very peaceful. And one time I was walking in my neighborhood, and I walked past my my neighbors, and I didn't realize how loud the piano was. But they were like, "So you're going to be playing some music today?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "We sit down and listen to you every evening because you've been practicing pretty much for like months now, and we can hear it. So we come outside with our coffee and we just listen to that." And I never could perceive that people would enjoy it, because up until that point, I was playing for myself in my moment. So it's been like, yeah, definitely very few people know about that. So that's a special one for me, but something that I enjoyed, but I miss a lot.
You had a great,
What's
that's
that?
a great answer. That's a great answer. You had an answer for it. I gave you options. You just didn't like them, but this is a great answer. Also, you love music. Like it just generally, like, yeah, you do. We've had like a lot of brainstorming sessions over like good music. We're fighting for control of the music. Hilariously, Shaun travels with a speaker, and his speaker prefers my phone, and so
yeah, it's
usually
really annoying. It's my speaker, and then we both connect it, and it just goes, and now iPhone. I'm like, Shaun's iPhone is
speaker
relegated. I'm like,
Lucia's power. It's just like, you know, also covering the speaker as well.
Yeah, it's pretty much life. Like when Lucia walks into the room, Shaun goes down. Like
that's terrible. That's terrible. I would hope that I don't have that impact. I would love to like make sure that you feel elevated in my presence, except for your speaker. I really want to retain control of that.
Absolutely, just a joke,
Oh, I love this. It's great content. I was wondering, just to wrap everything up, let's just quickly talk about the Eternals, the timeline. When you know, what's going to happen in the next couple of months?
Absolutely. Well, so basically right now, what we've been going through is a lot of like last stage testing to make sure that we have everything kind of perfect. We also want to launch with like many of the features live. So we've been trying to make sure that all of them are happening simultaneously. Where we're at right now is with the final stages of the artistic rendering. The game environment is pretty much done, where we've beta tested the connections between all of these things and a few others. But the sale itself, we expect to launch within a month. We have like moving pieces a little bit around that. There's some things outside of our control, but it's definitely within a month from our point of view, from all the information we have right now. And we're very excited about it. I think there's two factors. Obviously, it's the delivery that's important, like making sure we package it the way that we want, and also from our point of view, getting the message out there. So once again, on behalf of the whole team of Eternals, Ania, thank you for having us on, because getting the word out about what we're doing, you know, because it's complex and also a niche industry, can sometimes be a bit difficult. So we really appreciate being brought on a show like this to be able to give a perspective and your help in getting the word to the right types of audiences. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. It's been an amazing conversation, and I think we've learned a lot. And yes, I even personally find it extremely inspiring. Thank you for everyone tuning in. You can find more information in Eternals Discord channel and on the website, as Shaun told you. Also, if you enjoyed this session, subscribe to Tokenverse podcast series, and please tune into the next episode. And once again, thank you so much, Lucia and Shaun, for joining us, and have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you so much, Ania. Bye-bye.